Greetings. I am Brother Johannes, continuing the lectures of the overshadowing of the first chapter of Genesis and the first 4 verses of chapter 2. Sorry, we spent a lot of time on this, but we have to get things in order before we proceed to move further. So anyway, about the Kabbalistic, going back to the original Kabbalah or Ethiopic roots of Kabbalah, but universally going back to the original Kabbalah and the Kabbalistic origin of these scriptures that the patriarchs were able to receive spiritually from Yah, from the Most High Jah, the Father, our Creator. An interpretation of a single day to the Lord Yahweh, or to the Most High Jah, is 1,000 years to us on the earth, as we know. So in the gradual process, when we speak of a single day being the 7th day the Lord Yahweh rested after his work of 6 days of creation of heaven and earth. So in lightness of the Father, both in spirit and flesh on this earth, going back to the original Garden of Eden, it was necessary, Jah willing, that both man and woman kept that original resting period, that Shabbat or Sabbath, even before the curse of sin and the falling away and separating of God and man, and separating of the spiritual waters from heaven above and upon the earth and the whole physical realm, and the curse of the flesh, the curse of the earth, going in from the first original earth age to the second earth age as we know it today, etc., etc., etc. A number of different topics begin to branch out. We could keep on building with that and go further with that if we wanted to, but we need to stop and kind of backtrack for a minute. So the 7th day, Yah rested. So he expects us in his lightness to keep the Shabbat, the Sabbath day. There's 7 days throughout the week, the 7th day. And we went into that a few lectures ago into a much better grace covenant in the Brit Hadashah, in Yeshua, Jesus Christ, or in the Messiah. Yeah, we do have more freedom. Yeah, spiritual rest is in Christ, or Mashiach. The commandments are written upon our hearts, more of a spiritual covenant, yes, but we still have to take action, because it's only through Yahweh's true love and salvation that we must work out our own salvation, because Yah willing, we're still individual spirits of free will, as we were before the curse of sin. It was free will of both man and woman that kind of got us in this whole pickle, even though we were deceived by the serpent, the dragon serpent being the adversary, or Satan, or known as the Hasatan, or Satan, the devil, the fallen angels, connected with the Nephilim, the spiritual angels, the fallen angels, the race from the spiritual angels of darkness, and Satan's henchmen with the first woman or women of man on the earth. In the physical realm, from the metaphysical to the physical, giving birth to another race. We know some is the Nephilim or the Kenites. There's different races. We don't want to get confused about these separate races of Kenites and Nephilim, or the Jinn. When we speak of Jinn, the Jinn are actual devils, because you also have devils of spirit, cosmic forces, from the spiritual to the metaphysical, and what we know as the actual physical realm on the earth that we see with the naked eye in this realm, but not to get too deep, too fast. Okay, we'll slow it down. But the fallen angels, the classic story of Adam and Eve, the temptation of the serpent, and the tree of life and the tree of knowledge, eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the knowledge of knowing good and evil. That in itself is symbolic and spiritual, very symbolic, just like the tree of life that we covered in the previous lecture. So, going back to the Shabbat and the commandments, and going back to the Sabbath day, why is it relevant? Because in the likeness of the Father, because even in the Garden of Eden, before the curse of sin on this earth, it was a necessity to recharge. Man and woman lived in perfect peace and love and harmony and happiness. No pain, no disease, no fear of death, no fear, no jealousy, hatred. It was perfect peace. It was heaven on earth. It was that true spiritual Mount Zion on earth, right here in the physical realm. We had paradise. We had everything. The Most High Jah gave both man and woman dominion to name the animals and the creatures of the earth that he brought into creation as little gods, as God man on the earth. And because of the penalty of sin, because of lack of reverence and disobedience, the temptation to eat from the tree, the spiritual concept to eat from the tree of knowledge. And we'll get into that further as we eventually get there. But that caused a separation right there from the first world age. And then we have the second world age. We have the Adam and Eve of this world age as we know it. So it gets deep, because the Torah and even what we know as the Bible today, the book of life, both the Old Testament and what we call the New Testament or New Covenant, the book of life is very complex. You're talking about layers upon layers upon layers upon layers. You can never say, oh, I've read the Bible front and back one time, or I've read the Bible 2 or 3 times. Every time you read a particular scripture or a chapter, or even the whole Bible itself, you're getting into different layers and dimensions. Something it mentions in the Old Testament, in the book of Genesis, may not come up until like halfway through the Old Testament or even the New Testament, and the prophets or the gospel or even the book of Revelation. So there's layers upon layers. You're always going to pick up something. You're always going to get something out of the word. It's like lifting weights. You can pump iron and lift weights in the flesh, get big, as soon as you stop, for a long period of time, you're going to get mushy. It's not that you lift weights, once or twice and you're good for, you're set for life to be like Hercules. But now, we keep the Shabbat or the Sabbath to recharge, especially in today's age, especially in this one world system or Babylon system. It's like the vampire system that drains us throughout a weekly cycle, having to deal with people and everyday life and society, our jobs. So we need that day we need the Shabbat or the Sabbath day to recharge for the next cycle. Also, the Most High Jah, in Kabbalistic terms, allow the 7th day to be a day of rest in order to, further proceed in the ongoing process of creation. In other words, to make new for the next cycle, the next week, the next day, the next 1,000 years, and so forth and so forth. Creation itself is an ongoing process, even after the curse of sin upon earth, even after the curse of mankind and separation from Yah. It's still life in this present earth age is an ongoing, continuous ongoing process, and that's the beauty of it. So we also keep the Shabbat to make new for the next cycle, repair our hearts and our spirits on this path of righteousness. You see, and in this Shabbat period of rest, of course we don't work. The little we call petty sins, you can refrain from those little things, lust of the mind and heart, for just that little period. You have all the rest of the week to, and as far as keeping the main commandments in the path of righteousness, that's something we have to take part in 24 hours, 7 days a week, and so forth. That's just when it comes to knowledge of self, or even reverence to the higher Elohim, to the Most High. That's something we have to do on a path of righteous, of being righteous, not religious, but God conscious. So we're gonna pick up in the next lecture talking about the explanation of the dinosaurs. 1,000 years, the process of 6,000 to 7,000 years that you have the prehistoric age. We go into Job chapter 40. Job chapter 40 talks about the Brachiosaurus. We're about out of time, so until next time, peace.